Hello, everyone. This is Howard Fox, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series, the podcast that celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. James D. Paulk is our guest today. James is a 92-year-old, author of 2 books. He joins me today with a lifetime of experience and an eyewitness to many events in our history. His voice reflects a unique blend of resilience, perspective, and accumulated wisdom that has been shaped by his personal navigation of global events that others read about in the news or in the textbooks. Jim, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you, Howard. I'm glad to be here.
I can honestly say I have not met many 92-year-old authors or anybody 92 years old. You're looking pretty good there, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you have, first, I guess I have to ask, is there a secret to you've got a great smile, you still have your hair. I've already lost mine, but how do you stay so young and active?
I just have always, my whole life has been going from one project to another. I just keep going and I can't stop. I get my nurse and assistant fusses at me all the time to relax and take some time off, but I never can shut my brain down. It just keeps going. So I've been doing this all my life, and my best friend from elementary school said, Jimmy said, you've been organizing us since elementary school and telling stories all our lives. And I guess that's just me. I just enjoy being in charge of projects and getting people to work together. And I enjoy talking. I'm a talker.
I love it. And I have gotten into talking because of the podcasting, but I would be very happy behind the scenes in the back of the room. But I'm really envious of folks that it just comes natural. And it sounds like it, as you said, you've been doing it all your life, just engaging with people in conversation and stories. That is a wonderful skill to take with you your entire life. First off, I'm in Las Vegas. It's going to be about 65 degrees and sunny today. Where are you located?
I'm in Kingsland, Georgia, which is just north of Jacksonville, and which is where a lot of us have our doctors and go shopping and everything. The Jacksonville airport is like 35 minutes away. It's as close as LAX was to us when I lived in Orange County, California. So we're part California and part Georgia here.
Okay. Now, were you born in the Kingsland, Georgia area? Is that
no? I was born just north of here in Brunswick, Georgia, which is about halfway between Savannah and Jacksonville. And it's a small town on the coast,
okay.
and that's where I was born and raised there. And then I left after I got out of high school and went away to school, and I've been back. I organized the reunions for the high school, as a matter of fact. But we've lived all over the country ever since then.
Okay. Now, when you left after high school, give us a kind of snapshot of what's your career been like?
Well, I left high school, and Howard, it was my greatest dream in life to go to the Naval Academy. But after high school, I did not get an appointment. And I went to a military school in Dahlonega, Georgia, which is in the mountains of North Georgia. And I was there for a year. And after a year, I still did not get an appointment. So I went back to North Georgia for a second year, which was good because it gave me 2 years of maturity, and I actually went through differential equations, almost had a major in math by the time I was there. But after 2 years, I did not have my appointment. So I said, well, I guess I'm going to Georgia Tech and join my other friends and become an engineer. But I was playing in a golf tournament somewhere in Georgia. And I had a friend from another town that had become a friend of mine. He came running out on the course. Jimmy, your mother called. You got to call home. You got to get home immediately. I said, what's going on? He said, she didn't say. I said, well, I'm not walking off the golf course in the middle of a match. I said, I'll call when I'm done. So I called my mother and she said, you have an appointment to Annapolis. And I was like, oh, I
Oh,
couldn't
wow.
believe it. And so I got home. I don't even know where I was. I don't know how I got home. I guess I must have borrowed a car or something. And we had to go to Jacksonville and go through all the exercises required and get tested in every way. And then I had to be in Annapolis in a week. So it was really go, go, go. And then the first night at Annapolis, we had not been sworn in yet. And so you had people from, at that time, all 48 states and from 6 foreign countries that were there. And we had no responsibility. So everyone was running around, where are you from? What do you do? And it seemed like everyone I met had graduated valedictorian from their class. They'd been president of their class and they were captain of the football team. And I'm saying, what the heck am I doing here? I have none of those things. And I was in awe of my classmates. And I think that here was all these 70 something years later, I'm still in awe of my classmates. And the reason that I really wanted to do a book about my classmates because they were so impressive and they did so many things. And I thought the world should really know about my classmates. So that's kind of my
Okay.
motivation there.
Okay. So I have to share, and I do this on occasion. I'm a coach. I do executive and leadership coaching when I'm not podcasting, and we have this thing. Let's just call it a thing. It's called imposter syndrome. All right. And I love the fact that you wrote this book about your classmates from Annapolis. But Jim, you got into the arena. You got a little dirty, dusty, a little scraped up, but you're in the arena. You got to Annapolis. That's no small feat. All right.
Yeah, I tell people that everything I have in this world is a result of my going to Annapolis. I don't know where I'd be or what I'd be doing had I not. And I think the book is inspirational from the standpoint of looking at all of these people that all of these years later and what transpired in their lives. And the book is not an autobiography. It's not the I was born here. It's not boring bios. It's experiences of people and what they
Okay.
did and something. And some of them are accomplishments, but I love doing this.
I love it.
I just love going back and going. And no one said, "Who the heck are you to write this book?" When I said I'm going to do this book, everybody said we're going to help,
I
and
love it.
that was great. And I of course I put together what I call a review committee because always need helpers, and so I put together 8 people as a review committee. One was a woman that was retired from the Smithsonian, and I had a retired newspaper man from the Augusta Chronicle, and the rest were classmates, including one admiral in the review committee. And when we do stories, if the classmates were not alive, then after I got through editing the story, it would go to the member of the review committee, and they would check it for accuracy and edit it and send it back. If they were if they were alive, I sent it to them, and they would check it and send it back. But that's the way we did our due diligence on everything to make sure that it was accurate, and we worked really hard to make sure we had accurate stories there, and that's kind of how we put it together. And I just love doing it. I'll tell you the best part about it was the interaction I had with my friends.
Yes. I can
Yeah.
imagine that. Just the friends that, going through the academy. I mean, like any military branch, I mean, that is very special. I mean, they are your family in a way, a very large family, and it's always growing, no matter the age and the experience. Now, for our listeners, the book that you are alluding to is called "Shaking Up the World: Stories of the Naval Academy Class of 1957." How many stories are in the book?
There are 80 stories in the book by 59 authors.
Okay. So, okay, I'm gonna go on a limb here to say that there's multiple stories from a single author.
Oh, yeah. So, so,
Okay.
some did as many as 3 stories. I have several in here that I did. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
What stories did you write?
I did one on a classmate by the name of Bobby Nevin, and he was a hydronaut. And there are actually fewer hydronauts in the world than astronauts. Bobby went, first of all, the Navy sent him to the University of Washington to get a graduate degree in oceanography. And then they put him in charge of the Trieste 2, which is a bath escape. A
Hmm.
bath escape has a big float, and then underneath the float, there's a round, 8-foot round ball where you can put 2 or 3 people in all the equipment.
Right.
And the plexiglass window in it is 16 inches thick. And they get when the Scorpion went down out by the Canary Islands, they wanted to go and examine the debris field. So Bobby was given the responsibility of doing that. They put him in charge of an ocean going dry dock that had a crew of 125 people on it, and they had a crane on it. So the bath escape was sitting in the well deck, and then it was being towed by ocean going tugboat called the Apache, and the White Sands was what ocean going dry dock. So they left from San Diego, went south by the Baja Peninsula, and then through the Panama Canal, and then up to Mayport to get resupplied, and then they went out to the Canary Islands. Now, the bath escape was loaded with tons of iron ingots to give it negative buoyancy so it would go down, but it was filled with aviation gas, which was very light to give it buoyancy, so it could go up and it could go down. They
Hmm.
wanted to go up. They released some of the iron ingots to reduce it, and then it would float up.
Okay.
But they went down 11,000 feet. They were 2 miles deep in the
Wow.
ocean, and it took hours to get down, hours to get up, and some of the dives lasted for as long as 16 hours because sometimes they couldn't find the debris field. But the
Right.
first time they went down, they landed right on top of the Scorpion, just behind the sail area. And that was the only dive in the months that they were out there that it came that close. And what they had to do was they had to maintain a certain depth, and the only way they could do that was put the anchor out. And so they dragged the anchor the whole time they were on the bottom to maintain their depth on the bottom. And then took a lot of pictures and everything. And
Okay.
the purpose was just to get that and make a report, but it was not to define what happened. So
Sure.
there's nothing in the story about what happened and what caused it. It was examine the debris field. And
Oh,
Bobby was the officer in charge, but he had a crew of about 8 people that were pilots and took turns going up and down.
okay.
But it was an interesting operation, and I heard Bobby had did a presentation, and I was there, and so I remembered a lot of that, and then I had to do a lot of research. And his son gave me all the dive reports from it, and so I had all of that, and I did a lot. Like I said, I did a lot of research to put the story together. But that was a story that I did, and there was one aspect of it that was very interesting. One group that went down, they got stuck on the bottom. The suction was holding it on the bottom.
Mm.
and it had very small motors on it, and the motors on it were not powerful enough to pull it off. And they said there is nobody to help us. So they could have been stuck there for the rest of their lives, but they decided there were three of them in there. Why don't we coordinate and rock this thing back and forth? And so that's what they came up with. They rocked it like that until they broke the suction and could get off.
That
That's
is ingenuity.
yeah,
That's definitely ingenuity and persistence
yeah,
in the line of extraordinary events. I love that.
yeah.
I really want to get to your work in the outdoor space, but I do have one question about the book. There's a lot of cool stories here. I know as I was going through on a website that shall remain nameless. We'll provide links back to the book in our show notes. But some of the stories, there was a janitor who was to an admiral. Somebody was involved with a hijacking of a TWA flight. There was a classmate who was an Auschwitz survivor, someone who was a Japanese prisoner as a child, and even had a referee for 3 Super Bowls. So, of all the stories besides your own, because yours are probably top of the heap here, is there one story that when you were assembling this book and all 80 of these stories, when you said to yourself, "Wow, that is one heck of a story"?
There are several stories that would make a great movie. And
Okay.
I said wow about a bunch of them, but I'll tell you one that was really fun for me to do. Charlie Duke was Apollo 16 and spent 3 days on the moon. And Charlie said, Jimmy, and then we knew each other. And he said, Jimmy, he says, I don't want to write the story. He said, I want you to write the story. You interview me and you write the story, and then I'll check it. I said, well, okay. I've got a million details, and I wasn't planning to do a lot of those other stories. But I said, okay. So I asked my 30-year-old granddaughter to come over who had a photographic memory. I said, we're going to interview Charlie. You take notes. I'll take notes. Then I'll take the 2 sets of notes and I'll put it together and write the story. So that's what we did. And we got done with it. I sent the finished copy to Charlie, and he, of course, embellished it. And it turned out to be a really good story. And he sent me photos from NASA, and I picked 10 of them to be in the book. But Charlie's story is phenomenal, and he's quite a guy. And I enjoy doing that because my granddaughter was involved in it. But there are a lot of stories in here that but my favorite story, and I'll just take this. I'll just tell you this one other story, and you can shut me up. George Phillips was the skipper of an ocean-going tugboat, which is unusual for an Academy graduate. But he had 2 chief bosuns on board, and one had the engineering spaces. The other was Bosun Bean, had the top side, handled all the lines and the fuel lines and tugged and all the equipment and everything. And he got an assignment to go to Philadelphia and pick up a destroyer in the reserve fleet there and tow it around Florida to Texas. So they got up to Philadelphia, got hooked up to the destroyer. They got out into the Atlantic Ocean, and they found out there was a storm brewing down in Florida. He said,
Mm.
we can't get down there with this big destroyer behind us. That would be very hazardous. It'd be very, very dangerous. And so they decided to pull in to Port Angeles, which is now Fort Lauderdale, and wait out the storm. So when they got in down there, the night before, George started having severe abdominal pains.
Mm.
And the doc on board, which is the hospital corpsman, said, sir, you have appendicitis. When we get in, you have to go directly to the hospital. So when they got tied up and everything was secure, the ambulance and the paramedics were up on the pier, and they came down, loaded the shipper on a gurney, and there goes this captain up the gurney to the hospital. So they decided at the hospital that he really didn't have appendicitis; it was gastroenteritis. And the next morning, they sent him back to the boat. So when he got to the boat, they were all waiting for him. Skipper, here we are in the best Liberty port in the United States. We have no money. We haven't been paid in 2 weeks. We're broke. But we found out if you take our pay records to the Coast Guard station down in Miami, they'll give you money. You can come back, pay us. We can all go ashore and have a great time while we wait out the storm. And we have a pickup truck for you. So, so George gets in the pickup truck and he heads down Highway A1A, which has got the ocean on one side and strip malls on the other. So at some point, a guy wasn't looking and pulled out a strip ball, and he swerved to the left to avoid T-boning him. And when he did, he scraped all the way down the side of another car. So they pull off the road. The other driver is just mad as heck. And he called the police. The police came and gave George a ticket. And he said, I'm taking your driver's license because you're in the Navy. We can't depend on you showing up in court. But you come to court this afternoon at Miami at 2:00, and we'll give you your driver's license back. So there goes George going to court. So the judge was really an ornery guy. He was bilingual because half the cases were Hispanic, and he was just tough as nails. And when the clerk got up and read the charges, and George stood up, and the judge says, "How do you plead?" George said, "Not guilty." And the judge said, $25. And George says, "Sir, let me explain." He said, $25. And George said, "Sir," and judge says, "Bailiff, take him away." So the judge takes George by the arm and locks him up. So now the skipper's locked up. There's a telephone on the wall. That's it. And all George had was some loose change. So he put some change in the payphone and he called both. And he got his executive officers, the Lieutenant JG, and he said, "They got me locked up down here in Miami. I need you to come down here with $25 and bail me out." And the executive officer said, "Sir, I don't have $25. He said, "Well, pass the damn hat. There's got to be $25 on the boat." So a couple hours later, the executive officer shows up with Bosun Bean. And the bailiff lets them out, and they're standing in the hall. And George looked up at Bosun Bean. He says, "What are you doing here? You are all dressed up in blues like you're ready for inspection." He said, "Well, sir, I've never had to bail out the skipper before, and I wasn't going to miss this one." So, so, so as they were talking, the judge came out of the courtroom, and he saw this group down there. And he and Bosun Bean start looking at each other. All of a sudden, they ran together, started jumping and were hugging each other and everything. And the others standing there and all, they couldn't believe what was going on. And as it turned out, that the judge and Bosun Bean had been best friends in school. They had joined the Navy together. They were on a 40-millimeter mount on December 7th, 1941. And a bomb had blown both of them over the side, and each thought the other had been dead for 24 years.
Oh, wow. That is a story.
So the judge looked at George. He said, "Okay, $5 court case." So they paid the $5. He went back to the boat. And he got on the phone, and he called his wife. He says, "Honey, sit down. I have something to tell you. In the last 2 days, I've been in and out of the hospital and in and out of jail. That's all I have to say."
This is amazing. If all of the stories are even come close to this one, it's got to be a great read. I mean, you should. I can imagine you're in the coffee shops or community centers of sort, and the VFWs and the AO and the American Legions, and reading chapters out of the book. If you aren't, you should be doing that. I love that.
Yeah.
So I have a question because this is the Outdoor Adventure Series. And by the way, to our friends out in the internet land, Jim and I met via Podmatch, which is one of the sites where I am able to sign up guests for the show. And And Jim had mentioned the fact that he was an author and his latest book, Shaking Up the World. But then he said, I noticed you're in the outdoor space. Well, I have a lot of outdoor background behind me as well. So I had a question, Jim. What was kind of this transition for you from the world of the U.S. Navy and being on ships around the world and to becoming involved in angling and conservation and this really helping to protect the California, the coastline and the fish who are native to the coast? How did you get involved in the outdoor space?
Well, some people would tell you they like to fish, but I didn't like to fish. I have a passion for fishing. It is a passion in my life. I
Okay.
even had a rod and reel on the submarine. I had to sleep with it because there wasn't any place to put it, so I had it in my bunk, and I slept with a rod and reel wherever we went. I fished. So I've been fishing all my life. I'm not going to tell you I'm a great fisherman or anything, but I just love to fish, and I'm still fishing today. I can't get in a boat anymore, but my helper takes me to a farm pond, and I can roll my walker out on there and sit in a chair and fish for bass off that. But I've been involved in fishing for forever, and I was president of a number of fishing clubs over the years, and when some of these issues came up, I was asked to be a leader in them, and that's how I got involved in it. Was initially was with an initiative to eliminate the gill nets from California waters, and I had been asked to be with meet with a group called the Gill Net Watch Committee, and it was an eclectic group with doctors and charter boat skippers and just people that were regular anglers, and they asked me to come in and get them organized and to do some things. And so I'd been meeting with them for a couple of months, and then this initiative started that they were going to get initiative to eliminate the gill nets in California waters. And after a couple of weeks, some of the guys had been going to the meetings and said they're not getting anywhere. And so, unbeknownst to me, three people went to the assemblywoman that was sponsoring it and said, "This is not going to work. It's absolutely not going to work. You need to get Jim Paulk to head up this effort." And and anyway, she called me, and I went over to her office, and I said, "Well," I said, "Look, I have just retired from Procter and Gamble, and I'm starting this consulting company. I've got about 20 people I'm responsible for." And I said, "I can't just take off. You have to do it." So anyway, I got a bunch of people that jumped all over me, and I had to do it. So I agreed to lead the signature gathering campaign, and it appeared that we needed to get around 650,000 signatures in order to get 550,000 qualified signatures that would get it on the ballot in November. And so at that point, I went back to the Gill Net Watch Committee and I said, "Look," I said, "I've been asked to do this, but the only way I'm going to take this on is if you guys will be my committee and you agree to put your lives on hold, and all those will bust our rear ends for the next 5 months because we've already lost a month. So we've got 5 months to get these signatures." And so I said, we have to create the perception of success. That was the byword, success. Otherwise, people aren't going to donate money to buy signatures, and people aren't going to volunteer to go out and get signatures unless it appears it's going to be successful.
Mhm.
So that was the whole thing that I wanted to do. And so I had people everywhere. I had people walking the docks all over California to get signatures. I had petitions on port boats all over California. Every event had people at the gates. I had many events that the Orange County Fair, for example, had hundreds of thousands at the weekend, and the manager of the fair gave us a booth right at the gate, so everybody coming in and out went right by us. So, and the fish and tackle show, in Long Beach, which is the longest in the world. They gave us 3 booths there, and so we just went at this, and we were told we got over 100,000 volunteer signatures, which is the most ever done by volunteers. And so in June, we decided that we were going to put on a dog and pony show all over the state, and I needed to get an airplane that could cover the state. And I knew a guy at a mortuary, they had a twin engine King Air. And I said, will you donate your airplane for a day to fly California? And he said yes. And his brother agreed to be the co-pilot. It seats about 8 people. And so we took off in the dark from Orange County, which is just south of Los Angeles, and flew to Sacramento. And we got up there and we put on a dog and pony show in the governor's media room, which is a small auditorium. And it was crowded with media. And so the television and magazine newspapers and a lot of people there. And so we did that. And then we went back, got back on the plane. We flew down to Burbank and we did a dog and pony show at the media center there in Burbank. We had a lot of the TV people were standing up. In fact, Ronald Reagan's daughter, Patty Duke, was there. And there were a lot of VIPs that were there from Los Angeles that stood up with us. And so we got a lot of media there. We got back on the plane. We flew to San Diego. We got down there. They had lined up a bunch of fork trucks and they had pallet loads of petitions. And they had these fork trucks going down the street and they put all these pallets on the steps of the courthouse. And that attracted a lot of attention. And so we did a little dog and pony show from the courthouse, got back on the plane, flew back to Orange County. It was dark. So we had covered the state of California and we had did all that publicity. And then election night, we had a very wealthy person that sponsored the watch party. And Mickey Mantle was there. Joey Bishop was there. You probably know them from Vegas. Anyway, and we had a lot of VIPs and everybody, every half hour, I'd get a phone call and I'd write the number up on the board. And we won 53-47, which was a large victory. And over 3 years, we phased out the gill nets from California, which really saved one fishery in particular, the white sea bass, which is a pretty popular fish. But that's one, I think that's probably the most unusual accomplishment that I've been involved in. It had been tried twice before and failed. I didn't know that. I'm glad I didn't know that. But
Sure. Now, I mean, that is no small feat to really get a piece of legislation like that passed, and especially in a state like California. And the fact that I love the fact when we first started is you like to organize and get things done. And this is a perfect example of how you organize and get things done. And that's a wonderful legacy to help get something like this legislation passed. Now, the fact that you have the book, Shaking Up the World, you are also an accomplished writer for a number of the magazines that deal with fishing. And how is it like to write articles for other avid anglers out there? And what kind of what are some examples of the articles you would write?
well, when we did the initiative, my name became known over the California. And so all the magazines, they wanted my name in their magazine.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So the stuff I was turning out was garbage. I mean, I was a terrible writer. I was absolutely a terrible writer, but they wanted it and I'd write it, I'd work on it. Now, there was one story that I did on George Perry. I had been hearing all of this information about this man, George Perry, and they're going to break his record of catching the largemouth bass, the biggest ever on a world record. And I said, I knew a George Perry in Brunswick, Georgia, growing up when I was a little boy. I said, but he couldn't be the same one. So I called my best friend that was in South Carolina. I said, Mike, they're talking about this world record in George Perry. Was this the George Perry we knew? He said, yes. I said, I never knew he caught the world record. I said, well, people need to know more about him than catching this record in 1932 and 22 pounds and 4 ounces. And I said, he's the most unusual character I've ever known in my life. I said, I'm going to do a lot of research. I'm going to write a story on him because I want people to know this man. And so I did about 9 months of research. Now I wasn't a writer at this point. This was a beginning. And I got all these notes and everything. And then I was terrified to write the story
Mm.
because I didn't feel like I was competent enough to do a good job, and I wanted it to be done right. So I called Pete Thomas, who was the outdoor editor of the LA Times, and I said, Pete, I've got all these notes on George Perry, and I think you are the best outdoor writer in the country. You need to write this story. He said, no, Jimmy. He said, you need to do it. He said, I read some of your stories, and he said, you're getting better.
That's great.
said, I said, getting better. I said, I'm a terrible writer. He said, no, you do it. So I, I
That's
took,
wonderful.
I took all these notes and I spread them out in chronological order. And I sat down and I started writing. And when I got done, I handed it to my wife. I said, what do you think? So she read it and she said, it's awful. I said, yeah, I know it's awful, but we can work on it and make it better.
There you
And
go.
so we did about 9 iterations, and as it turned out, it was published in 4 magazines and newspapers, and I did a lot of interviews as a result of it. And in fact, I was asked when they put up a monument at his location where he caught the fish, and I was asked to be one of the speakers at that, which was real benefit. But I had some personal experiences with this man as a child,
Sure.
and he was unbelievable, and I admired him so much, but I never knew he caught this fish.
It's amazing what you learn just by being in the right place at the right time. And I absolutely love this story about how you got into the writing for the magazines and writing stories. I don't think I shared this. I'm a member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. So we're about to getting ready to celebrate our 100th anniversary. If you and I had known each other 5, 10 years ago, or actually right now, you could be a member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America because of those stories. But the point I wanted to bring up is many of the folks who join the association, they are perhaps amateur writers. They have a love, a passion. Yours is angling. Others are upland game hunting. And there's an individual in particular, I'm thinking about Edgar, who is a retired law enforcement officer, and he loves upland hunting. And his first stories, he was like, oh, it's not that great. It's not that great. 3 years later, Jim, he's everywhere. Wherever there's a story about upland game hunting, he's there. And so that sounds like the lesson you learned is, and your friend at the paper, his advice was spot on. Just keep writing. You get better. And you kind of look back now, you have these books behind you. That's a wonderful legacy.
Well, I think you would enjoy my first book, Swimming for Our Lives. That's a book about fishing stories and outdoor adventures, and you would love that book. I don't know if we've got any more. Do audiobooks?
I do audiobooks. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like a copy audiobook of that first one?
I would love to listen to that book, and I'll have you back on. We can talk about that book.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. Before we head out today, Jim, frankly, I don't know how anybody asked a 92-year-old man who looks as good as you do, what has been your, I call it the aha moment. It's kind of, you look back at your life, and I mean, you have some wonderful stories and experiences behind you. And as you go into the next year, 2026, what's at the top of your list to accomplish now that you've got the second book behind you? You've got this legacy of writing, helping to get legislation passed. You're an accomplished magazine author. You've won a number of awards. What are you going to accomplish in 2026?
Well, the first thing's going to happen is the third book's going to come back from the publisher. It's being edited right now.
Oh my God.
So, and that book is called How I Found Love. And it's a compilation of stories that are just unbelievable of how people met someone else. And so, especially in midlife, that they never thought they'd meet someone. They met someone in the most unusual way. And so these are very unusual stories. There are 32 stories in that book, and it's going to be good. Then for 2027 will be the next book, and it's called Close Calls. And a lot of people have had close calls, and we've already got, I think, maybe five stories in the file for that. So if I live to 2027, there will be a fourth book. So
All right.
that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right. I love it. I'll tell you what. So since you were kind enough to gift me a copy or an audio copy of your first book, I would love to have you on again. We'll go on my business podcast where I have a lot of book authors, and I will interview you for book number 3 when it's published. Okay.
That'd be great. I'd love to do it. Yeah.
I'd love to do it. Jim, it's been a pleasure. I am so grateful you and I have crossed paths and you are open to being on the podcast. And really I mean, I know you want to get out there and promote the book, Shaking Up the World. It sounds like you're already doing a great job with it, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit more about the outdoor adventure focus of your work and your experiences. If listeners would like to learn more about you, where should we send them to?
Well, I've got two Facebook pages. One is Jim Paulk. The other is James D. Paulk Jr., author. And if they want to email me, they can certainly send me an email at jimdpaulk@yahoo.com. I spend hours every day just communicating with people. In fact, I have to tell you, I had a guy that called me up in November, said, I want to come out and visit you. And I hadn't seen him in 30 years. And he came me out with 4 days in there. And I was a little apprehensive about hosting somebody for 4 days, but it worked out great.
I love it. I hope I get a chance to get to Georgia because I definitely, I'm going to buy you a beverage of your choice. And it's, again, I realize maybe you don't drink or maybe it's a cup of coffee, a tea, but a beverage of your choice. It'd be so great to meet you in person, shake your hand, and really keep getting out there and doing what you're doing. You are definitely an inspiration for anyone who says, just do it. And I love your stories and just keep telling them. And thank you again for being on our podcast.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time.
All right. Listen, Jim, stay in the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Okay.
All right, folks, this is really, believe it or not, this is the last recorded episode for 2025. I am so grateful to have the opportunity to have had Jim on today's podcast. I mean, 92 years old, just celebrated that birthday. And now I learn in 2026, book number 3 is just going to get ready to get published. And book number 4 is planned for 2027. I'm telling you, what a legacy. And some great stories, and we're going to provide backlinks to Jim's books and really just shaking up the world stories of the Naval Academy Class of 1957 and also Swimming for Our Lives. I want to do our best to get a couple photos of Jim in action, whether it's in the Navy or out on canvassing to get signatures, but some nice photos for our show notes. And really give you backlinks to his Facebook page. And we hope you enjoy today's episode so you can really, if this isn't cause enough just to get out there and stay active, Jim is somebody you definitely can emulate. As for us, you can find our episode in the new year. It'll be on our website, outdooradventureseries.com. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook on our Outdoor Adventure Series pages. And of course, you can listen to this episode wherever you get your podcast from, and the video of this episode will be up on our YouTube channel. Okay, folks, it's a wrap for 2025. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a fantastic remainder of your year, and we wish you good health, happiness, hope, prosperity in 2026. Until next time, this is Howard Fox, and you are listening to the Outdoor Adventure Series. Take care now.